Okay. Hi. I went through Push by Sapphire. That's what I decided to focus on for my project. So here's my opening thing. So context of author and summary. So our original author has a name they no longer go by. Some things that are really important to context of the story through the context of the author is that our author actually changed her name to Sapphire based on their fascination with Black women in today's society. So, the idea of Sapphire is the fascination of crystals in their time of becoming an author, seeing the way that Black women identified with crystals, one being the sapphire, and another is the fact that it was based off of a character from a show that she was watching. Essentially, what happened is the media started creating these stereotypes of Black women. An example being Aunt Jemima, and an example being the Jezebel, which you might see as a Black woman being very over sexualized. And you'll see that idea of a Jezebel in a bunch of places, one being Eartha Kitt's Catwoman, the way that her sex appeal is the number one thing about her. And the reason the media created this specific stereotype or this caricature of Black women is to create this idea that Black women call this attention to themselves, not that they're fetishized. Um, and so the sapphire is kind of like this fiery Black woman that's going to tell you how it is, and is assertive, but to a white audience and standards, somewhat aggressive as well. So the fact that our author would take this name and go under it was really a way for them to kind of give power to that in the same way we see other things going on in the Black community, slurs being used, things being used as a way to bring power to the term for the Black community instead of against. So that's important to understand because, as you can see in my little notes here, okay, maybe you can't, but it's in my mind. She was somebody who studied literature, studied dance. Her passions really involved with bringing a voice to Black people, the Black community, but specifically Black women. She was a poet. She uses a lot of literariness in Precious in the way that there's foreshadowing, in the way that there's wordplay, in the way that things might have multiple meanings. It's never just like just a plain sentence. And that's really interesting in this story because even though there might be a lot of grammatical errors, there's reason for that. There's reason for everything that's written in the book. Things have a double meaning, and we'll unpack that at the quote that I'm looking at. Um, so um because she works on giving this voice to Black women in the Black community, we see that Precious itself was inspired off of somebody that she had met who was an overweight Black woman, pregnant, felt unspoken for, felt unsupported, and felt hard finding their own identity because they felt like the Black community kind of left them out. It locked them out of this broader culture of not just Black community, but that Black female subculture. And all of my information used to find uh, all of the information used on this portion of my slideshow involving the author has come from Sapphire Story, How Push Became Precious, and then which was an article, and then also Britannica.com. So that's where all that information comes from involving that. A summary on Precious, essentially, to sum it all up, is this young high school level aged girl who is overweight, Black, and she's super oppressed. She is dealing with being a female in the society of the time the book was written on. She's dealing with being overweight. She's dealing with being Black. She's dealing with being in a household that is not only not supportive, but really abusive towards her, emotionally, verbally, sexually. And the book is pretty graphic about those experiences. And there's some debate over as to whether those experiences need to be so in depth or if they don't. Um, but beyond that whole conversation, the point of the book is it's bringing life to the experience of this fictional oppressed woman and tries to bring a voice to other women like Precious who have seen that whole thing. So Precious is trying her best to honestly push through the obstacles of her life and figure out who she is. And she's trucking along trying to get through the things. She has 2 kids, one of them is disabled. Um, and so her child is called slurs. She even calls them a slur herself because she just doesn't know better. Like, she just doesn't have the education. And so you see this kind of you see that cycle start to happen in the Black community, and I think it even speaks for that too. This idea that the Black community could do better if they just did better, and it kind of shows you like how they get stuck in this cycle. Precious is oppressed. Precious is misunderstood. Precious isn't given a lot of opportunities. Precious doesn't believe in themselves. Like, Precious is systematically oppressed beyond socially oppressed, and just oppressed, not just oppressed, but oppressed in society. Like, she's systematically oppressed. She's in a really poor education system that is not giving her what she needs to in terms of growing up and getting the things done. Now I see we lost our slideshow. Okay, so sorry about that. She is not getting some of those things that she needs to receive. And so you see how it's a eye view in for those who can't relate with that experience, seeing how you can kind of get trapped in this cycle of you don't have a great education, so then you can't do all the things you want to do. So then you have these children, and these children end up in the same position. So anyway, yeah, summary of the book: super oppressed young girl who is trying to survive and get through her life and make understanding of what she's going through, trying to learn how to write, thanks to Miss Rain, her teacher, who's trying to help her take this class before she can kind of get like a mock GED, if you will. But really it's a statement about overweight Black women in today's society. So the quote I wanted to pay attention to is when she says, "I always did want to be a singer or a dancer. I used to dream about it. Be on stage with a sparkly dress on, hair and I have no idea how to say that, lights on me, makeup on my face, singing. But I can't sing. I can't dance. I can't even talk. I can't talk. My whole life, I ain't never said nothing, just listen. Sit in the back of the class, look out the window, listen to the teacher, listen to my mama, listen to the rain, listen to the refrigerator, listen to my heartbeat, listen to my own self." That's the text. And this seems really self-explanatory, but here are some of the observations that I made about it. First of all, the use of dialect. We see can't, C-A-I-N-T, can't do nothing, things of that terms. And as I mentioned earlier, we see that Sapphire uses this idea of, oh, that was a mistake. Let me go back. Can I go back? Excuse me. It's okay because I know what I'm trying to say. So sorry, my friends are not meeting the vibe check. Anyway, okay, lots of dialect. We see in here the culture she's coming from. We see that lack of education. By her saying, "I can't do this A, B, C, D," it's not just telling us that Precious doesn't think that she can do those things. It's showing us that Precious hasn't been given the opportunity to do those things. It's beyond Precious not being able to sing. Precious was never given the opportunity to learn. And this lack of grammar in this quote shows us that. It shows us her background a little bit. Focus on negatives, I can't. Precious is having this moment where she realizes all the things she hasn't experienced. I've always wanted to sing and dance. I've never been able to do it. I can't do it. I can't do this. I can't do this. I only do this. I only do this. She's realizing that she lives in this box. She lives in this box that does not match the dreams that she had for herself. And, that's a very powerful observation because everybody puts you see Precious being put down over and over and over again. And when you're I mean, even when you're not a child, but specifically when you're a child, whether she's a mother or not, she's a child. When you constantly make a child feel like they can't do something, they're gonna believe that. I can't do this. All I do is this. All I do is this. All I do is this. That's the focus. Precious can't dance. Precious can't sing. And I think it's really interesting because it shows you the effect um on her mind and the fact that she's starting to recognize that effect. I can't do this. I can't do this. I only do this. That feeling of being trapped. She also uses the words I used. I used to dream about it. That implies that maybe she doesn't dream about it anymore, which means that there's some hope lost. Or at one point she lost hope in those dreams. Precious is like any other girl, any other woman who has these ideas of what they want to do with their life, of who they want to be. And Precious has seen that taken from her, not only by the systems that are oppressing her, but by her own family life. She has 2 kids that she did not intend on having, were not done through her actual decisions. It was due to something someone else was doing to Precious. And so this idea that her life was kind of taken from her, or maybe she's realizing there's still some life to come, which we see she does as the book goes on. We see her start to really push through and find her way. But this analysis of her life, all these things that Precious wants to do and she can't do them, and she used to dream about it. And I just think that that's really interesting and says a lot about the book. All right, so my thesis here is that this specific um quote in the book, I think is, if I had to give one quote, first of all, to anybody that has not read the book, we know the movie, which is called Precious and not Push, is very famous for Monique's monologue, and a lot of people would associate the story with that, but I don't think it should be. I think it should be this quote, because this quote addresses a handful of things. It addresses, as I said, the dialect, her education, where she's coming from, the fact that she doesn't have the opportunities, the fact that she's starting to see things turn around because she's starting to um, like push through, but also learning how to advocate for herself and learning how to communicate through working on writing. This snippet of text from this story, I think, in my thesis, is totally about Precious beginning to take her own power, or realizing that she could, or realizing mostly that there's power for her to take. I think that Precious believes truly for a while that she's spoiled goods because she's treated like it. And her saying, I used to dream, implies that someone finally made her believe that she might be spoiled goods. So I think that my thesis on this snippet of text is that it shows um that Precious is aware. She's starting to become aware that she is her own person. It is a text that communicates more than just, I want to do these things and I can't. It is a text that is supposed to show you that Precious not only can't do these things, she has dreams for herself you might not have ever heard of before. It's not like singing and dancing is a huge element in the book, but it's just this idea that Precious has her own mind, her own thoughts, her own dreams that she hasn't been given the opportunity to pursue. And I find this really interesting, especially considering the fact that the author, Sapphire herself, studied dance. She knew the power of singing and dancing and storytelling, and she understood that she was able to have that opportunity. Though I'm sure she had to work very hard and do the things and to get to that point. She had that opportunity. And so writing that in this story, talking about someone who didn't have that opportunity, I think is really interesting because it pays attention not only to the Black female experience, but the experience of a Black female dealing with the things that Precious is dealing with, and how that can stop someone from being, who they want to be. So, yeah, that's my thesis of this text. I really enjoyed this book. It was heartbreaking. It was graphic, and a little bit of a hard read in that way, but I think it was really powerful. And I think that the second that I read this small text, chunk of text, it was like painfully apparent that that's what I was going to write about. So, yeah.